My name is Blake Moore, Natural Resources and Horticulture Agent.
Hey, I'm Dan Severson, Ag Agent.
I'm Jake Jones, Kent County Ag Agent.
And I'm Katie Young, Digital Content Specialist.
Welcome to Extension 302.
Welcome to Extension 302. Today, me, Blake, Jake are going to discuss food safety during the holidays. Joining us is Miss Kathleen Splane. She's a University of Delaware Extension agent for the Family and Consumer Science and serves as the Food Consumer Science Co-Program Director, having received a BS in Nutrition and Consumer Science and a Master's in Health Promotion from UD. Welcome to Extension 302, Miss Kathleen. I do have to say that we do go back a little bit in history as far as working for the University of Delaware. I am privileged and happy to be talking to you today. And we're going to talk about food safety, and I love holiday meals. But for me to consider a holiday meal, I have to have lima beans and corn. I have to have succotash. What food do you need to be present for it to be a holiday for you?
Well, I'm all about the stuffing and the mashed potatoes. Got to have the carbs and the cranberry sauce. So those are the main ones that I really love.
When you say cranberry sauce, is it made
from... I just like the jellied stuff out of the can. Nothing fancy,
you really?
None of that. No, because then you can smear it all over your turkey. See, even if your turkey's dry, it fixes it.
Okay. There's a tip right there for cooking.
I have to have my wife's macaroni and cheese. She makes the best macaroni and cheese, and I have got to have that pretty much in every holiday meal, let alone Thanksgiving. And then if she wants to make it on the regular, I'm good with that too.
Sounds good.
Opposite. Jake? I like that cranberry sauce that's real tart and has the cranberries in it. So I'm the opposite of Miss Kathleen.
There you go.
Okay. Good. That's what makes holidays holidays. All right. So Miss Kathleen, what steps should we follow to ensure a safe holiday season as far as food safety? Are there any tips?
Sure. There's lots of tips I can give you on this. But before we even go into the holidays, what I like to remind people is that everything that we're going to talk about in this podcast are things we should be doing every day, whether it's a holiday or not. These concepts pertain to feeding your family safely, feeding your loved ones safely, no matter what time of year. But there's really 4 core practices that I like to talk about when we're talking about preparing food safely in our home. And that's keeping it clean, keeping things separate, cooking properly, and chilling properly. So that clean, separate, cook, and chill are the main things that I like to talk about. And I can talk more specifically about each one of those as we go through. Starting off with clean. I think everybody's gotten the message these days in 2020 about proper hand washing. So that's one that we really need to think about, even if we washed our hands when we've come in from being at the grocery store, but making sure we wash our hands really carefully before we start any food preparation. Making sure we're using clean surfaces and clean utensils, clean cutting boards, clean dishware, and then even things like the produce that we might be incorporating into our meals, making sure that's washed and rinsed before we move on with the preparation. Even things like cantaloupe, oranges, you're not going to eat the outside, but you need to make sure that produce is rinsed because you're going to be pulling through any of the dirt and debris from the outside into the inside. So just really cleaning, and then making sure that you're using some sanitizing in your surfaces too as well. Just a simple tablespoon of bleach with a gallon of water will be a great sanitizer, and then just put that on your surfaces and allow them to air dry. Back in the good old days, we used to towel dry all our dishes and put them away. But really, the idea is to air dry. So even before you start the food preparation, you got to have a nice clean setting. So I'll talk more about the other parts as we go through.
All right. So what are some of the major foodborne illnesses that can come from improper food handling and preparation?
So there's several. And believe it or not, in this country, when we talk about foodborne illness, in this country, thousands of people die from foodborne illness and millions get sick. About 1 in 6 Americans come down with foodborne illness, and they often don't know that that's what the problem is, because it's really hard to trace back to what they've eaten. But we kind of call it the big 6. And the 2 foodborne viruses that are of most concern are hepatitis A and norovirus. And the main way they can be prevented is like I said, with good, clean hands, with good personal hygiene. And then there's 4 foodborne bacterial concerns. One is Shiga toxin producing E. coli. We've all heard of E. coli before, right? And then there's 2 types of salmonella and then Shigella. And these are the ones that are the most contagious and the most problematic. And those foodborne bacterial illnesses usually come from improper cooking and cooling of our food. So these can vary depending on the person's situation, from a mild gastrointestinal distress. People have actually died from these illnesses. So it's something to think about.
So when we hear of a recall, what's the difference between like some fresh food getting recalled because of, known
like
appearances of the disease, when it compared to just improper food handling? Like what's the difference there?
So when a food has been recalled because it's been traced back to some kind of bacteria or virus, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I'm thinking most of these foodborne illnesses are something that if we improperly handle our food, we're going to come across them. But then you have recalls on some foods that are, I guess, are they just known to have had this, or what takes a recall?
Yeah. So sometimes what happens is, for example, there was a company in Kent County, Delaware, who was producing cheese that was contaminated with Listeria monocytogenes. And once people got sick from that, they traced back and they were able to recall that product. So usually it's because people have gotten sick from that product, or maybe through some kind of analysis, they've discovered it before it's been distributed. Generally, it's because someone has gotten sick and then they have to recall that product.
Thank you. Sorry to go off.
No, that's okay. I hope that answers your question.
No, because I had a question. I had food poisoning before. It was like, was it Campylobacteria something?
Campylobacter jejuni. Is that the one you had?
Miss Kathleen, all I know is it was like the worst acid trip ever. I was hallucinating. I was on IVs in the hospital.
Yeah.
And I don't want to wish that on anybody.
Right. And you were lucky they were able to trace that, because it really is hard. It really is hard to figure out what's going on. People are living longer lives, so their immune systems are more compromised. People are out in communities that have gone through chemotherapy, organ transplants, and we don't know who's coming to dinner at our house for the holidays and who we need to think about. But these are people that are living with pre-existing conditions. And I'm sure, Dan, you were a very healthy young man when this happened. So it can happen, and it's really, really serious.
I'm still a very healthy young man.
Well, younger than me. Let's just put it that way. I'm glad you recovered.
So, Miss Kathleen, can you discuss the proper thawing and cooking techniques? I know in my house, we are usually last minute thawing stuff. So I would like to know, for my own reasons and for everyone listening.
Right. So this comes under those core 4 practices, the cook part. So yeah, I know I grew up in a household a long time ago where every day my mother took a package of ground beef out, put it on the kitchen counter, and that's what we had for dinner, something to do with that ground beef. But really, these practices we've discovered are not safe. So you really have to think ahead. And there's 4 safe methods for thawing food. One, of course, takes the longest, and this might be hard, Jake, if you're used to taking things out later. In that case, you might want to just order food out, right? I was going to say go out to a restaurant, but I don't know if that's pertinent today. But, we got to really think ahead. Okay. So
she just called you out, Jake.
Just saying. So the 4 safe methods, of course, are to take the frozen product and put it in the refrigerator, making sure your refrigerator is 40 degrees or below. Okay. And you have to have a refrigerator thermometer in your refrigerator to know that. But that's going to take some time. And especially if we're talking about, with the turkeys, like a big 20-pound turkey, you can't take that out even Monday or Tuesday. You need to take that out way ahead of time. And they recommend that it's a day in the refrigerator for every 4 pounds of meat. So even taking it out a week before Thanksgiving and putting it into the refrigerator would guarantee that it's defrosted. So that's the first thing, is take it out and put it in the refrigerator. The second way is you can microwave the frozen product, but you want to cook it completely once you microwave it. You don't want to take it back and put it in the refrigerator and then cook it the next day, because we call that the temperature danger zone from 40 to 140 degrees. And we don't want our food to take too many trips through that danger zone. So cook the food, defrost the food completely, and then, skillet, cook it, or put it in the oven, whatever you're going to do to cook it thoroughly. The other thing you can do is you can put the product in cold water, but you have to change the water, or cold running water, but then you've got the running water. But you have to change that water every 30 minutes because you don't want that food to get into that temperature danger zone. And then the last thing is you could cook it from frozen. You could take that product and put it in a skillet and start cooking it from frozen to make sure that it's cooked completely and not sitting in that danger zone too long. So you asked about thawing, and then you asked about cooking. So I really recommend that people go on the USDA's website, and or on the Cooperative Extension website, and you can see proper cooking temperatures for different products. And depending on what the pathogen is that generally hangs out in that food, different foods have to be cooked to different temperatures. For example, poultry is 165. A roast is 145. When you're cooking your food, though, I know this is something that I did growing up too. We just looked at the juice coming off the meat, and we figured if that juice was the right color, if it was clear with poultry, then it must be done. You really need to use a meat thermometer. Oftentimes hamburgers can be a little brown in the middle, but they're still not at the right temperature. So really important to make sure you're using a calibrated meat thermometer. Suggest that if you celebrate the December holidays, put a meat thermometer in all your loved ones' Christmas stockings, if they don't have one already.
That's a great gift.
My kids will love me for that.
So I have a question real quick. Am I putting myself at risk because I like my burgers a little under?
A little under. Okay. So, well, as long as your immune system's nice and strong, we all have our personal preferences, but you really want to make sure that hamburger is cooked to the proper temperature.
I'll cook it for you, Blake.
Yeah. And
I appreciate that.
The difference between a steak that you can cook to 145 and a hamburger that you really need to cook to 160 is that if there is any pathogen on that steak and you take that steak and put it into a meat grinder, now that pathogen is on the inside of that hamburger. Yeah. Professionally, I have to tell you, you need to cook your ground meat to 160 degrees.
I appreciate that. Looking out for us.
Miss Kathleen.
And is it the same thing with pork chops? Because that's another one where I used to hear that it was, if you're cooking a pork chop, there's no pink in there at all. But now all the fancy chef shows are showing, it's got to have a little bit of pink in there for it to be good. Is that another one that needs to be cooked?
Well, we're talking about like pork chops. The recommended temperature for that is 145.
Blake, the pork used to go back to the same thing with rabbits. You couldn't eat rabbits after a certain time because of pork was raised out on pasture and possible contamination of worms. And so if you would cook the pork all the way through, it would kill the worms, so you wouldn't get the worms kind of thing. But now most pork is raised indoors or not exposed, or we have better management that they're not exposed to this kind of contamination of worms. So we don't have to. Now it's like Miss Kathleen saying, it's more of a temperature than like cooked.
Roger. Okay. I'm learning so much right here. I really appreciate that.
Like I said, I could do this for a couple of hours.
Miss Kathleen, I know we're coming up on the holidays. That's why we're having this food safety. And to me, I would give up all my holidays for Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is my holiday. That's the day I would when I was milking, I'd be like, I'll milk Christmas. I'll do everything Christmas. I just want Thanksgiving. And so for Thanksgiving for me, it's a marathon. That's when you put on your sweatpants and it's all day long. So you have appetizers out, and then you're going to have the meal, and then you're going to have dessert. So what's the best way to handle all this food sitting out before, during, and after? Because like I said, I want 16 hours of just like glutton.
Yeah, no, that's good. And one nice thing about Thanksgiving is you don't have to buy those stinking gifts, right? It's just family, it's just people, right?
It's just lima beans and corn.
Right. And cranberry sauce out out of the can. So this is a real challenge, especially if you have people come in waves to eat, and different people. But like I said, this is the same thing. Just think about people that eat at different times on a regular day. So-and-so comes home from work and they eat 2 hours later than somebody else. So your challenge is making sure you keep the food out of that temperature danger zone, that 40 to 140 degrees. Food should only stay in that danger zone for 2 hours or less. Okay. So if it's a cold food, you put it on an ice tray, on a double bowl with some ice underneath it. Or you just put out what you're going to be able to consume in a short amount of time. And then if it's a hot food, and it's going to stay out for a while, just be cognizant that you need a hot tray or a crock pot or something to keep that food above that 140 degrees if it's going to be on a buffet, because that any chance of it going in that danger zone, and that's where your meat thermometer can come in. You just be checking the temperature every now and then. And when we're talking about what foods to keep hot and what foods to keep cold, we're really talking about what's called potentially hazardous foods. We're not talking about every single thing on your menu, but things like your potatoes, things like your meat products, of course, even things like cut up fruit, chopped tomatoes. All those are foods that have been traced back to foodborne illnesses in the past, and we have to be really careful with, your dinner rolls and things like that. Of course, you don't have to worry about things like that. But yeah, that's the big challenge, is keeping the food out of that danger zone. So keeping something cold underneath it, or a hot tray or crock pot, if you're going to have it out for more than that 2 hours. Like I said, replenishing from the oven or the refrigerator is a great way to be careful with that. So,
what about butter? I get questions like, can we keep butter out, or does it have to go in the fridge?
Yeah, so I get this question a lot. Food has to have a certain level of moisture in order to be problematic, right? Butter has such a high fat content, and it is not one of those potentially hazardous foods, that it really could stay out at room temperature. But the problem is we're talking about a pristine, clean butter, right? So once you've dipped into that butter and you're buttering your grilled cheese bread, right? And then you accidentally touch it to the cheese, and then you go back and you dip it in the butter again. So it's not your high fat, clean, pristine butter anymore.
It's contaminated.
And there's a possibility that the pH of that butter might have changed, or the moisture level of that butter might have changed. So I'm with you. There's nothing worse than trying to butter toast with butter out of the refrigerator, but it's just it depends on who you're feeding. Are you feeding somebody that's in the high risk category as far as foodborne illness, that kind of thing? So,
well, no, I'm putting it on Blake's burger.
I'll take it.
He's already taken risks. So.
Yeah. And look, butter does not stay in our fridge. And before I met my wife, she never did that, and it was revolutionary for her when she discovered soft butter.
Yeah.
Butter.
Same thing with peanut butter. Technically you're supposed to keep your peanut butter in the refrigerator, but it's really hard to make a peanut butter sandwich with refrigerated peanut butter. So,
wow, I had no idea.
Yeah, I didn't know that one.
Me neither.
Yeah, there's certain molds that have been associated with different illnesses that could come up in peanuts, but
I did not. Man, this is one of the best ones yet. I'm learning so much today.
We're gonna have to pay you extra for this episode.
There you go. Okay.
I'll take it.
All right, so we were actually talking about this a little bit ahead of the episode about leftovers, how awesome leftovers are, especially from the Thanksgiving holiday. But what are some tips and techniques and things we need to worry about when we're handling these leftovers?
Yeah, so like we said, if things are out for more than 2 hours, it's really, you've all heard that when in doubt, throw it out. It wouldn't be safe to save them as leftovers, but if they've been kept at safe temperatures and handled correctly, certainly package them up and use them. I recommend we have a food storage chart on our website, the Cooperative Extension website. You can use that as a guide of how long to keep foods in the refrigerator and the freezer. So as an example, your leftover turkey. If you want to make turkey pot pies the week before Christmas with your leftover turkey, of course you're not going to put that in the refrigerator. Put it in the freezer. That would be great. And then you can use it. It has a longer life that way. Yeah, making sure you're putting those products in clean containers, putting them away quickly in the refrigerator. That would be the best way to handle those leftovers. Or even if it's too much for your family to use, send them home with people. Just another way to move it out, right?
Yeah, leftovers are my favorite part of Thanksgiving. I love cold turkey sandwiches with lettuce, onion, sitting there watching the football game. Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds good. Sounds great. With some of that smeary cranberry sauce.
No, I don't know. I don't even, was it Capriati's that has the
Bobby.
The Bob? Yeah, no, that doesn't do anything for me.
So I think we're nearing the end. Do you have any take-home messages or things you'd like to promote, Miss Kathleen, like any upcoming trainings?
Before I do that, one thing that I didn't talk about, I talked about the clean, cook, and chill, but the separate. So that's making sure that you're not cross-contaminating when you're doing your food preparation, that you are washing and cleaning your cutting boards and utensils and things between raw and ready to eat food. Things like marinades, if you're going to use a marinade, make sure that it's discarded if it's been used to marinate meats, and then because it's got the meat juices and things like that. But yeah, as far as upcoming things, I do have a program called Would Your Kitchen Pass a Food Safety Inspection? I'm doing by Zoom. That is coming up, and it's listed on our Cooperative Extension website where they show different upcoming trainings. And that is on November 19th from 12 to 1. And that I'll go over a lot of the concepts that we talked about already today, but a little more in depth. And it gives people a chance to ask questions and things like that. So, but just the take home message really I'm thinking about is no matter whether you're fixing a meal for yourself or you're fixing a meal for a large group, just be thinking about all these good food safety concepts as we go through, and use the resources on our website. And then the Partnership for Food Safety Education, they have a website that has great consumer resources, and also the USDA does as well.
Well, Miss Kathleen, you're also a local celebrity for all your YouTube videos and stuff.
Oh, how about that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going there with that. Let's go.
Yes, and my videographer, my husband, the behind the scenes guy, and my dog walking through the kitchen every now and then under the table. It's all whole thing here. So
yes, and they can find you on UD Extension, Facebook, YouTube page, stuff like that, because they're awesome videos.
Right. Yeah, there's some good videos. They're more food preparation as far as healthy recipes that we did this summer. Some good things like that. More nutrition related versus food safety related. So I do teach a class too. I teach Serve Safe for people in the restaurant business or people in the food industry business. And I also teach a class called Dine Safe, which is great for church volunteers, fire hall volunteers. I've done that by Zoom. So anything like that people are interested in, I'd be glad to help them. Or if they just have questions, they can check in with me, email me. I get a lot of food safety questions. So oftentimes people are just wanting my permission to consume something that they really know they shouldn't be consuming. They're very sad when I tell them, no, you can't eat that product that has been sitting out for a week. So
yeah.
Anyway, hopefully this has been helpful. I really appreciate the opportunity to get to talk with you all and share this information. So thanks very much.
Yeah, we greatly appreciate it for sure. I think I should throw this in there just because, every year it seems to be like a message that goes out there. But how about all those turkey fryers out there? You got anything to tell them in order to not cause any issues in the cooking process?
Well, that is more of a fire safety issue, I think.
Yeah. Remove it away from your house and your vehicles.
You guys may have more experience than I do with that. But actually, deep frying a turkey is a great way to do it. And, the meat is just as nutritious. And they found that it doesn't really have that much more fat in it than doing it in the oven because of the film between the skin and the meat. So, yeah.
Just be careful of the moisture of the turkey because water going into hot oil, not pretty.
Yeah. That was one other thing that I didn't even talk about is people want to wash their poultry. I understand people want to wash out that cavity in the turkey, but by washing produce that says it's already washed or washing poultry, you're actually spreading pathogens around your kitchen. So on that note.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, Miss Kathleen, thanks. Thanks it's been very enjoyable. We love doing this podcast, and I want to thank everybody listening to Extension 302. This might be our last podcast for 2020, but we'll see what we can do to get maybe a recap in of 2020 and how we got all this started. But thank you for support. And if you have time today, thank a farmer. Everybody have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.
This podcast is for educational purposes only. The views expressed by both guests and hosts are their own, and their appearance on this program does not imply endorsement by the University of Delaware or UD Cooperative Extension. We hope you've enjoyed today's episode and will come back for more. In the meantime, please subscribe, visit us online at udel.edu/extension, and join us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at UD Extension. This program is brought to you by the University of Delaware Cooperative Extension, a service of the UD College of Agriculture and Natural Resources, a land-grant institution. This institution is an equal opportunity provider.